Hello, I'm Sam, and my family's betrayal almost broke me. My father said, dinner would be better without you, and it was just the beginning. They kept me out of Thanksgiving, but that lie was nothing compared to what they did behind my back, stealing my inheritance, selling my house. The truth will shock you. Why did they do this to me? Was it to silence me, or was there something worse? You won't believe the twist coming. Stay with me to find out how this all ends. I hadn't been home for Christmas in years. It was my first time back after retiring from the military, and I was both excited and hesitant. The place still felt familiar, the old house standing proud on the corner, tucked in the heart of our neighborhood. I used to think it would feel like a homecoming, but as the car rolled down the street, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed. Maybe it was me, maybe it was them. I parked the car and took a deep breath before walking up the front steps. The familiar creak of the door echoed as I turned the knob. It swung open, and there they were, gathered around the living room, laughing, chatting, the sound of their voices floating in the air like a melody I hadn't heard in far too long. But something was off. Something had shifted, and it wasn't just the years that had passed. "Hey, Ma, look who's home!" My youngest son, Jarrell, grinned from across the room. His words were warm, but his eyes? They were distant. Everyone else turned their heads slowly, their faces polite but not quite welcoming. The kind of politeness that felt empty. I set my bag down, trying to muster a smile. "Merry Christmas, everyone!" A few mumbled Merry Christmas responses came, but no one moved to embrace me. No hugs, no "it's so good to see you." Just that cold, detached politeness. I kept my chin high, but inside, I could feel the hurt creeping in. The dinner table was set. It looked beautiful, the kind of spread that said family in a way that didn't match the reality I was seeing. There was ham, mashed potatoes, green beans, rolls, everything I used to cook every year. Yet, I couldn't escape the sense of being an outsider, even in my own home. I sat down quietly, hoping that this would be the time it would all feel right again. That maybe, just maybe, my family would show some recognition for all I had done. The bills I paid, the sacrifices I made, the money I sent back when they needed it. It didn't matter that I was far away. It never mattered. The conversation around the table flowed like normal, but not to me. They talked about their work, their achievements, their lives. The conversation was comfortable and easy, but I wasn't part of it. I was just there, a silent observer, a shadow in the background. And then it came. My father, glass in hand, stood up to offer a toast. "To Lauren," he said, his voice full of pride. "The one who always shows up." The clink of glasses echoed in the room, but I didn't join in. Lauren, my older sister, the one who had always been the golden child, the one who never left, who never had to sacrifice. The applause felt like a slap to the face, and as I sat there, I realized how invisible I truly was to them. But then, it got worse. My father's voice broke through the laughter, his words sharp as a knife. "Dinner would be better without you." I froze. The room seemed to shrink around me. His words were nothing new. I had heard them in different forms before. "You're too quiet. You're too distant. You're never here." But hearing them now, after everything I'd given, everything I'd sacrificed, felt like a betrayal, a wound that had festered for too long, now laid bare for everyone to see. I could feel my heart sink into my stomach, the coldness of his words reverberating in my chest. For years I had put up with this. For years I had kept my silence, thinking that maybe, just maybe, my sacrifices would be enough, that my family would see me. But it was never enough. It was never enough for them. I forced myself to breathe. I was a soldier after all. I had faced far worse than this. I knew how to hold my ground, even when it felt like the world was falling apart. But as the dinner continued, my mind drifted to the past. I remembered the years I spent away from home, sending money back to cover bills, to make sure everyone had what they needed. I remembered the nights I stayed up late, working while they slept, just to make sure they didn't have to struggle. I never asked for anything in return, never expected thanks. But now, here I was, sitting at the table like I didn't matter. I tried to push the memories away, but they came flooding back. The countless sacrifices, the late-night phone calls, the endless hours of work, all of it had been given to them, yet none of it had ever been acknowledged. My father's words haunted me as the evening wore on. Dinner would be better without you. The pain of it stung deeper than I cared to admit. And then, my phone buzzed, a text from my father. Dinner would be better without you. Don't come back. His words were cold, dismissive, just like the years I had spent trying to please him, trying to earn his love. I didn't know how to respond. The pain in my chest felt unbearable. I looked around the room, at the people who were supposed to be my family. And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I stood up from the table. I didn't say anything. I didn't scream. I didn't make a scene. I just left. I walked out of that house, into the cold night. I didn't look back. I couldn't. As I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed again. It was a voicemail. From Mr. Calloway, the family attorney. "We need to discuss the estate," his voice said. I woke up the next morning with a knot in my stomach. The voicemail from Mr. Calloway replayed in my mind, the words still echoing in my ears. "We need to discuss the estate." It was blunt. No explanation, no warmth, just the business-like tone of someone who had no personal stake in the matter. I tried to shake it off, but that feeling, that nagging feeling, lingered in my chest. Why had he called? Why now? After all those years of giving, of being the one who always showed up, why was my father's lawyer suddenly reaching out? I grabbed my coffee, and as I took a sip, I felt the sting of my father's words from the night before. Dinner would be better without you. The rejection still burned, but the voicemail, that was something else entirely. Something deeper. Something that didn't just sting. It made me feel like a pawn in a game I didn't even know was being played. I dialed the number. "Hello, this is Ms. Sam," I said, my voice steady but tight. "I received a message from Mr. Calloway. I'm here to discuss the estate?" There was a slight pause before the secretary spoke. "Mr. Calloway will be expecting you at 11. Please come by." I hung up and sat back in the chair, the weight of the situation sinking in. 100 thoughts swirled through my mind. Should I go? Should I even bother? I could feel the familiar dread creeping in, but something told me this wasn't just about a will or some legal matter. It felt bigger. Something had changed, and I couldn't just ignore it. The clock ticked by, each minute dragging more than the last. By the time I made it to the attorney's office, I was already steeling myself for whatever was to come. As I walked into the sleek, modern building, I felt like I was walking into a battlefield. The sharp lines of the walls, the cold, polished floors, the sterile, businesslike atmosphere. It was all so different from the warmth of the family home I had hoped to return to. Mr. Calloway was waiting for me in a quiet corner office, a tall man in his 50s with a carefully arranged demeanor. His handshake was firm, but there was no warmth in it. I didn't expect any. "Ms. Sam, please have a seat." He gestured toward the leather chair across from his desk. I sat down, waiting, my mind already racing. He cleared his throat before speaking. "I'm afraid the matter we need to discuss is not as simple as I had hoped." He paused for a moment, looking at a stack of papers on his desk. "Your father made some significant changes to the family trust. At first, I thought it was a standard update, the kinds of things people do when they feel the need to organize their affairs. But as Mr. Calloway continued, I realized this wasn't just a simple update. He continued, "Your father has named Lauren as the primary heir to the estate. She will be managing the assets moving forward. My breath caught in my throat. Lauren? Lauren? It felt like a punch to the gut. Lauren, who had always been the favorite, the one who could do no wrong in my father's eyes, the one who had never left, the one who didn't have to sacrifice anything to keep this family afloat, the one who would get everything while I was left with nothing. My mind was racing. How could this happen? I had been the one paying the bills. I had been the one making sure everything stayed afloat. I had worked tirelessly while everyone else lived their lives, and now I was being erased. It wasn't even a real conversation. It was just a decision made without my knowledge, without my consent. Mr. Calloway looked at me, his face unreadable. This is a legal matter, Ms. Sam. Your father's decision is final. There's nothing I can do to change it. I felt the room start to close in on me. My pulse was pounding in my ears. So, that's it. I've been supporting this family, sending money, paying bills, and now I'm nothing? He didn't respond. He just looked at me with that same indifferent expression. I felt a cold rage building inside me. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make him feel the weight of the injustice. But instead, I sat there, silent. As I stood to leave, the reality of it hit me. My father had never seen me. Not really. I had always been the one behind the scenes, the one who kept everything running smoothly. But when it came time for someone to take charge, to take what was rightfully theirs, it wasn't me. It was Lauren. It was always Lauren. The walk to my car was a blur. I didn't know how I made it to the parking lot, but somehow I did. As I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat, I paused, taking a deep breath. Understood, I whispered to myself, the words echoing from the text my father had sent the night before. The hurt was still there, raw and exposed. But there was something else, something different now. A quiet resolve, a sense of clarity. I didn't know what was coming next, but I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. The night was long, too long. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, the sound of my father's voice echoed in my head, and the image of Lauren taking everything hit me like a slap in the face. There was no escaping it. It wasn't just about the money, though that was the obvious part. It was about years of being overlooked, of quietly supporting everyone and watching them live their lives while mine slipped through my fingers. I was tired, but not tired enough to give up. The betrayal hurt. It still hurt, but it was different now. I wasn't just angry. I was feeling something new, something that had been building for years, but I hadn't been ready to face. It was a fire, slow at first, but now burning brighter. I was no longer the quiet one in the background, no longer the doormat. I had been pushed too far, and now I had to decide if I was going to take it or if I was going to fight back. I knew what I had to do. The next morning, I made the call. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for another slap in the face. I arranged a family meeting, hoping to get some answers, but more than anything, I was ready to make them hear me. Sitting at that dinner table, waiting for everyone to gather, I was calm on the outside, but inside, I was seething. I could feel the tension building, the anger pushing against my ribs, but I wasn't going to let it control me. I had to be smart. I had to be patient. When everyone finally sat down, I looked around the table. There they were, my family, my father, the one who had always been a rock for everyone, or so I thought. My siblings, who had been wrapped up in their own little worlds while I carried the load. And Lauren, who had always been the one who could do no wrong. The golden child, now holding all the cards. No one acknowledged me. No one made a move to include me. The air was thick with the absence of anything resembling warmth or appreciation. They were all too busy with their own lives to care that I had just shown up after years of being the one who made everything work. My father broke the silence with a raise of his glass, his voice loud and jovial. "Here's to Lauren, the one who always shows up, the one who's always there for us." The words stung. I didn't need to hear that. Not again. I wasn't invisible. I wasn't some afterthought. But it was clear that I had been reduced to that. Everyone clapped. Everyone praised her. And I sat there, a lump in my throat, holding back the tears. I wasn't going to let them see how much it hurt. I wasn't going to let them win. I couldn't keep quiet any longer. "Dad," I said, my voice steady but firm. "What about me? All these years I've been here, keeping this family together, paying bills, working when no one else would, and now I'm being erased from everything. How is that fair?" The room fell silent. I wasn't asking for sympathy. I wasn't begging for recognition, but I had to know. I needed to understand how it had come to this. My father's eyes flickered to me, but his expression didn't change. He shrugged, taking a long drink from his glass. "It's just business, Sam. You need to get over it." Just business. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, but I kept my voice calm. "Business?" I repeated, the word tasting bitter. "You don't do this to family. This isn't just business, Dad. This is me. I've given everything, and I'm nothing to you." He didn't respond. He just took another drink, his eyes never meeting mine. "Why?" I asked, my voice quieter now but still sharp. "Why Lauren? What did she do to deserve everything? What about me?" This time, it wasn't just my father's silence that spoke volumes. My mother, who had been sitting quietly at the table, her eyes cast down, suddenly looked up. Her voice was soft, but it carried weight. "Sam," she said, her eyes tired, "your father has been trying to protect you. The family. We've been struggling. The debt. It's been piling up for years. Your father didn't want you to bear that weight." Her words hit me like a brick. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mother knew. She had known all along. All those years I thought I was the one holding it together, and now I found out that I had been kept in the dark. "You didn't tell me?" I asked, the words bitter on my tongue. "I didn't want you to worry," she said quietly, looking away. "But it's been hard. And now, your father's just trying to protect you from the burden." Protect me? From what? From everything he had done to me? I could feel the walls closing in, the weight of all the years of sacrifice, of being the one who was never seen. But I wasn't going to let this define me. I wasn't going to stay here, playing the role they had cast me in. I stood up, my chair scraping against the floor. "I'm done being the family sacrifice," I said, my voice low but steady. "I'm done. If you can't see what I've done for you, if you can't appreciate me, then I'm walking away. I'm not coming back." The words stung. They tasted like acid in my mouth, but they needed to be said. I wasn't going to let my life be controlled by their neglect. I turned and walked out of the room, feeling the weight of their stares on my back. As I reached the door, I looked over my shoulder at my family, sitting there in stunned silence. "I'll fight for what's mine," I whispered to myself, stepping out into the cold night, "even if it means losing everything." The door closed behind me with a soft thud, and for the first time in a long time, I felt free. The air was thick with the weight of unspoken words as I stepped into Mr. Calloway's office. The sleek glass building felt cold, distant, nothing like the warmth of family I had longed for. This wasn't about family anymore. It was about business, and I hated it. Sitting across from the lawyer, I felt a knot form in my stomach. I wasn't sure if I wanted to hear what he had to say, but at this point, I didn't have a choice. The call, the promise of family matters regarding the estate. I'd been waiting for this moment, but I wasn't prepared for what I was about to hear. Ms. Sam, he began, his voice professional but detached. I'm sure you've been wondering why your father asked for this meeting. I nodded slowly, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't just wondering, I was desperate to understand. He slid a file across the table, opening it to reveal the trust documents. The changes your father made to the estate? Well, they're more significant than you think. At first, I thought it might be routine, maybe a few tweaks, a simple update here and there. But as he started explaining the clauses, the way his voice grew more careful, I felt the truth sink in, cold and heavy. Your father, Mr. Calloway continued, has decided to name Lauren as the primary heir. I'm afraid you were not included in the revised will. I sat there, stunned. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Lauren, the golden child, the one who never had to lift a finger, the one who was always praised for simply showing up, and now she was getting everything. Why? I whispered, my voice trembling despite my best effort to stay calm. Why did he leave me out? The lawyer hesitated. He said it was to protect you from the burden of his debt. Your father didn't want you to carry that weight. Protect me? Protect me? My chest tightened as I struggled to make sense of it. So, this was his idea of protection, cutting me out, erasing me completely, making sure I had no stake in anything that was mine. I had sacrificed so much, worked so hard for this family, and this was how it ended? I stood up abruptly, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I couldn't stay there anymore, couldn't sit in that sterile room with a man who spoke so casually about the family I'd given everything to. Thank you, I muttered, my voice hoarse, and walked out, slamming the door behind me. My legs felt weak, but my mind was racing. Had my father really done this out of some twisted sense of protection? Or had it been a way to keep me under control, to keep me from ever truly having a voice? I didn't know, but I would find out. As I stepped into the street, the world seemed to blur around me. I couldn't see clearly. I wanted to scream, to punch something. But more than anything, I wanted answers. Why hadn't he ever told me? Why hadn't he trusted me enough to share this with me, to let me decide for myself? I had always known my family kept secrets, but this felt like a betrayal too deep to ignore. Walking through my old neighborhood felt surreal, like I was reliving my life through the eyes of someone else. The houses looked the same, but everything felt different now. I had always been the responsible one, the one who kept things together, the one who made sure everything was running smoothly while the rest of them lived their lives without a care. I had done that for years, and yet no one ever acknowledged it. And now, here I was, standing at the crossroads of a life I didn't recognize. I couldn't stay in the shadows anymore. I couldn't continue to live as the family's martyr, quietly shouldering their burdens while they reaped the benefits. The flashbacks started hitting me harder now. I remembered my father's words from when I was younger, the way he had always told me I was too smart for my own good. At the time, I had thought it was a criticism, but now I saw it for what it truly was, a warning. He had feared me. He had feared my independence, my strength. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much he had tried to control me, how much the whole damn family had tried to keep me small, to keep me from ever stepping out of their shadow. As I walked, I felt the weight of everything, my past, my family's expectations, the years I had spent trying to please them, crushing me. But something else was stirring inside me now, anger. But not just anger, a new strength, a new fire that I hadn't known was there. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I saw it. The letter. It was from a different lawyer, one representing one of my siblings. They were trying to settle the estate, outside of court, without me. I didn't need to read the rest. I knew what it meant. My family was trying to finish this without me, without giving me a say, without giving me a chance to fight for what was mine. They were closing the door on me, just like they always had. I was done waiting, done being pushed aside. I wasn't going to stand by and let them decide my fate anymore. I drove home in a daze, the letter burning a hole in my pocket. I was done. The moment I stepped into my apartment, I went straight to my desk. I needed to act. I needed to take control. I couldn't let them have the final say. I couldn't let them erase me. I started drafting my own documents, preparing to fight, to take what was rightfully mine. But as I stood there, holding the papers, about to make the call, I froze. For just a moment, I hesitated. What if I lost everything? What if my family never spoke to me again? And then, just as I was about to pick up the phone, I saw him, my father, walking toward my door. I sat alone in my apartment, the thick envelope in front of me, the weight of it pressing down on my chest. I had sent those papers to my lawyer, had made the decision to fight. Now, I was on the edge, ready to face whatever came next. I knew this was it. The moment when everything could change, or it could all stay the same. Either way, I couldn't go back. I stared at the envelope, the legal documents inside seeming to mock me with their finality. A flicker of hope, fleeting but persistent, washed over me. Maybe my family would come to their senses. Maybe they'd listen. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to fix this without destroying everything. But no, they had destroyed it. I was the one who had been erased, the one who had carried them all this time without ever asking for anything in return. Now it was my turn. Just as I was about to reach for the phone to call my lawyer, the doorbell rang. I hesitated. It couldn't be. I didn't expect anyone. But I got up anyway, walked across the room, and opened the door. There, standing on the other side, was my brother. "I've been thinking about what you said," he started, his voice lower than usual. "Maybe we can talk this out before things get worse." I looked at him, trying to decipher his face. Was he sincere, or was this another attempt to pull me back into the fold, to make me believe that everything could go back to normal? I wasn't sure. I didn't trust him anymore. "I'm done talking," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "It's too late for that." His face faltered, a brief flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. "Sam, we're family," he pleaded, stepping forward. The anger inside me flared, threatening to spill over. Family. What had that word ever meant? A family that never truly saw me, never understood what I was carrying. They didn't deserve my understanding anymore. "I know exactly what you're trying to do," I said, my voice cutting through the space between us. "Another round of 'let's work it out,' only to sweep everything under the rug again. Well, I'm not playing that game anymore." He opened his mouth, as if to argue, but I held up my hand, silencing him. "I sent the papers to the lawyer," I continued, my words sharp and unyielding. "And I'm done being the one who keeps everything together while the rest of you do what you want. You want to talk? Fine. But know this, I'm fighting for what's mine." He stepped back, shocked, maybe even a little afraid. He hadn't expected this side of me. He hadn't expected me to stand up. Before he could say another word, I turned away, closing the door behind me. I wasn't going to let them manipulate me anymore. Not now. Not ever again. I walked to the living room, the letter in my hand, the papers inside ready to be sent off for good. But just before I could seal the envelope, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen. It was my lawyer. "Sam," he said, his voice tight. "I just got off the phone with the family's lawyer. They're already trying to undermine your case. They want to make you look unstable, question your mental state in court." I felt a chill crawl down my spine, but I didn't flinch. This wasn't the first time they had tried to gaslight me. It wouldn't be the last. I'm not backing down, I said, my voice cold and steady. Tell them I'm ready. I'll fight them every step of the way. I hung up, not giving him the chance to say another word. It was time for me to act. Time to show my family what happens when they push me too far. I wasn't just going to fight for the estate. I was going to fight for my own dignity, for my place in this world. Just then, a voice in my head, my mother's voice, echoed through me. Stand tall, no matter how the world tries to knock you down. I sealed the envelope with steady hands. I wasn't just standing up for my inheritance, but I was standing up for everything I had sacrificed, everything I had been forced to endure in silence. I wouldn't let them control me anymore. With a determined breath, I walked to the door, ready to send the documents to my attorney. But just before I could open it, I froze. There, standing on my doorstep, was my father. His face was hard, his eyes cold. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The tension in the air was thick, suffocating. I didn't know what he wanted, but I knew it wasn't anything good. I came to talk, he said, his voice gruff, but there was something else in it. Fear, maybe. I shook my head. There's nothing left to talk about. He stepped forward, reaching for the envelope in my hand. I pulled it back instinctively, not letting him get any closer. You think you can just change everything, walk away from your family? He asked, his voice rising now. You don't understand the consequences of your actions. I met his gaze. No. You don't understand. I'm not afraid of you anymore. I've carried you all long enough. This time, it's my turn. I opened the door, and without saying another word, I walked out. The phone call from my lawyer had left a bitter taste in my mouth. I wasn't prepared for what he had said. The words about my family's attempts to undermine my credibility, attempts to tear apart everything I'd fought for, rang in my ears. But it wasn't just about the inheritance anymore. This was bigger. They had crossed a line, and now I was ready to take a stand. It wasn't just a matter of money. It was about respect, about acknowledging the years I had poured into a family that never truly saw me. I stood in front of the window, staring at the city below, watching the world move on as I stood still in this fight. I took a deep breath. It was time to gather my strength. The phone rang again, pulling me from my thoughts. I picked it up, and it was from a distant relative I hadn't heard from in years. Her voice was a whisper, but the urgency in it made my heart race. Sam, you need to know something. There's more to this than you think. Your family, there's a conspiracy going on. They've been working against you for a long time. My breath caught. A conspiracy? Was this the final piece I needed? You need to be careful, she warned, before the call abruptly ended. I stood frozen, processing the weight of her words. The walls my family had built around me, all these years of manipulation and secrecy, were collapsing. But the fire inside me burned brighter now. They had underestimated me for the last time. I gathered everything I had, texts, emails, the witness statements I'd collected, everything that proved the betrayal. I had been silent for far too long, but not anymore. I couldn't keep letting them hide the truth. I closed my eyes for a moment and remembered my mother's voice. Don't let anyone steal your peace, no matter how much they try to break you. With that in mind, I made the call to my lawyer. The decision had been made. The family gathered around the table. The air was thick with tension. I could feel their eyes on me as I walked into the room, my body no longer tense with fear, but standing tall with defiance. They were waiting for me to back down, to let them continue the lies, but I wasn't the person they had once known. This time, I was in control. They tried, of course. My brother spoke first, offering a new deal. Sam, he said, trying to soften his tone. We can fix this. We'll talk it through, come to some agreement. Just don't make this harder than it has to be. The offer was an insult. The same game, the same attempt to control me. I couldn't help but laugh, bitterly. You think I'll fall for that again? I replied, shaking my head. I'm not some fool you can play with. I laid the documents on the table. This is what I've got. This is the truth. I watched as their faces paled, one by one, their lies, their manipulations laid bare before them. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about dignity. It was about the right to be heard. One of my sisters spoke up, her voice trembling. Sam, don't do this. It's not worth it. Please, we can figure this out. I held my ground. You've had your chance. But you didn't just take from me, you took from all of us. And now it's time to take back what's mine. I stood, letting the weight of my words settle over them. A silence followed, heavy and uncomfortable. For the first time, I felt powerful, unshakable. But then, my cousin, someone I had always trusted, opened his mouth, and I knew the storm was far from over. You're making a huge mistake, Sam. If you keep pushing, I'll make sure the world knows exactly what you've done. Your reputation won't survive this, he threatened. I didn't flinch. You want to ruin me? Go ahead. But I won't be silenced, not anymore. After the confrontation, I was left alone in my thoughts, feeling the rush of emotions wash over me. The anger, the hurt, the relief, it was all there, swirling inside me. I had done it. I had stood up for myself for the first time in my life, but it wasn't over. Just as I was about to process everything, my phone buzzed. It was my lawyer again. They're already trying to discredit you. They're questioning your mental stability, trying to make you look like you're unstable, he said. I wasn't surprised. They'd tried that before, but I wasn't about to let them win. I've got this, I told him, my voice steady. They think they can break me, but they're wrong. The weight of everything was starting to feel more manageable now. It wasn't just about fighting for what was mine. It was about proving that they couldn't control me anymore. I looked out the window, the dark sky stretching out before me. It was time for the next step. But as I prepared myself for what was to come, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't turning back now. I walked to my desk and pulled out the papers I had prepared, getting ready for the battle ahead. The morning felt heavy, the quiet before the storm. I had spent the entire night reflecting, piecing together every part of the fight I'd been gearing up for. There was no turning back now. I'd come too far. Too much had been taken from me to let it slide. Every memory, every sacrifice, every moment I'd spent fighting for this family, it all led to this moment. This was the reckoning. The phone call with my lawyer had been the final spark. He'd told me there was a hidden clause in my father's will, something that could change the entire course of the legal battle. It was the last piece of the puzzle, the one thing I needed to win. But as the adrenaline surged, I also felt the weight of everything. I had to be careful. I had to think before I acted. My next moves needed to be calculated. I wasn't just fighting for what was mine. I was fighting for my dignity, my peace. I could feel the fire inside me burning hotter, knowing that this fight was bigger than just the inheritance. It was about reclaiming my life. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was my old friend, Tanya. She had been with me through so many battles in the past, and today was no different. You've been fighting this fight all your life, Tanya said, her eyes full of understanding. Now it's time to win. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. In that moment, everything felt so clear. I'd been fighting for so long, but now it was my turn to take control, to set the stage for the future I deserved. I left the meeting with my lawyer feeling a mix of dread and power. I had everything I needed. I was ready for the battle, but I knew this wouldn't be easy. When I walked into the room for the family gathering, I could feel the tension in the air, thick as fog. They were expecting me to cave, to let them continue the lies and manipulation. But I wasn't that person anymore. I wasn't afraid. I wasn't going to back down. The first words came from my brother. Sam, we're trying to make things right. We want to find a way to resolve this without all the drama. I looked at him, then at the others, their faces twisted with deceit. They thought I would fall for it again, but I wasn't here for their false promises anymore. You think I'll take your lies and walk away? I asked, my voice steady. You can keep your empty offers. I'm not backing down. I laid out the documents I had gathered, everything they had tried to hide, the evidence, the truth. They all looked at me, speechless for the first time. You thought you could manipulate me forever, I continued. But I'm done being the one who carries your weight while you get all the rewards. There was a long silence. The guilt in their eyes was palpable, but I wasn't done yet. One of my cousins, who had always seemed loyal, spoke up, his voice shaking. Sam, don't do this. You're making a mistake. We're family. Family? I laughed bitterly. You've been using that word as a shield for your betrayal. I'm not falling for it anymore. Just as I thought I had them cornered, one of the family members threw out their final, desperate offer. They tried to bribe me with money, to silence me once and for all. You want me to be quiet? To let you win? I said, shaking my head. You've got nothing left. No money can buy my silence anymore. The battle was far from over. The betrayal stung, but it only fueled my resolve. My mind raced as the family's manipulation grew more desperate. They tried to twist my words, drag up my past, but I wasn't backing down. This wasn't just a fight for the estate. This was a fight for everything they'd stolen from me. My respect, my peace, my power. I would no longer be their puppet. Then came the shock. One of my closest allies, someone I had trusted, switched sides. Betrayal ran deeper than I'd ever imagined, but this didn't break me, it steeled me. They thought they could use this betrayal against me, but they didn't know me. I looked at the media, at the people watching. I wasn't just fighting in the courtroom. I was fighting for my future, for justice. I wasn't going to let them control the narrative. I remembered the years I'd spent invisible, the years of being ignored and unseen. I wasn't that person anymore. I stood tall. And just when I thought I was gaining the upper hand, they threw another curveball. The family tried to strike again, offering me a settlement, but this time, I wasn't buying it. Court day arrived. The room was charged with tension. I stepped into that courtroom with everything on the line. I had to be strong, had to show them I was ready to face whatever came my way. The opposing side had a trick up their sleeve. They introduced a piece of evidence that threw me off balance. For the first time, I was caught off guard. My heart pounded in my chest. They thought they had me, but I wasn't going to let it end like this. I stood up, calm and collected. This evidence is circumstantial, I said, my voice cutting through the air. It's misleading. It's not what it seems. The courtroom held its breath as I turned the tables. My confidence was growing with every word, and I saw the family start to crumble under the weight of their lies. But just as I thought I had them, the surprise witness took the stand. Someone from my past, someone who knew the darkest secrets of my family. The truth they had tried to bury was about to come to light. I stood in front of the judge, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. The final moment, the last chance to get everything I deserved. But even with the truth laid out before me, I couldn't help but wonder what the future held. I had fought for so long, and now the decision was out of my hands. But I knew one thing, no matter the outcome, I had won. I had found my voice. I had stood up for myself, for my peace. The judge's gavel came down. The decision was about to be made. The weight of everything I'd fought for settled heavily in my chest as I sat alone in my car. The world felt still, but I knew that inside, everything was changing. The moment of truth was upon me, and there was no turning back. I could see it all clearly now. The days when I was the quiet one, the one who did all the work, supported everyone, and got nothing in return. How many times had I stood by, silenced by my own family's expectations? How many years had I spent doubting my worth, listening to them belittle me, all the while pouring everything I had into their lives, into their needs? But today was different. I wasn't that person anymore. Today, I was standing tall. I couldn't help but remember my mother's voice, clear and steady in my mind. They can try to break you, but you will always rise. Her words were my anchor, and they had carried me through countless moments of self-doubt. Today, I wasn't just fighting for the estate. I was fighting for me, for my dignity, my self-respect, my power. But even as I gathered my strength, a memory surfaced, one from my childhood, my family telling me my dreams were foolish, my father always so sure of what was best for me, belittling me, saying I wasn't capable of much. That memory hit me hard, shaking my resolve for a moment. I closed my eyes, the sting of those words echoing in my mind. But then I remembered, no one had the right to define me but me. The phone rang, snapping me from the past. It was my lawyer. My heart skipped a beat as I answered, bracing for whatever came next. "The family's been hiding something," he said, his voice serious. "There's another clause in your father's will that could change everything. It's the key to winning the case." I felt the ground shift beneath me, the final piece of the puzzle. The family had been lying, covering up their actions for so long, but I now had the upper hand. I was ready. I could feel it in every fiber of my being. The battle had begun. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. As I stepped inside, I was met with the cold, hostile faces of my family. No longer was I the quiet one, the one who shrank in the shadows. Today, I stood tall, ready to claim what was rightfully mine. I took my seat, eyes locked on each of them. There was no fear, only a burning determination. But before I could speak, one of my relatives, a cousin, tried to undermine me. "She's not here for justice," he said, addressing the court. "She's here to take everything from us." I didn't flinch. I met his gaze and spoke calmly, my voice cutting through the tension. "What I'm here for is the truth, and that truth will expose all the lies you've been telling." I laid out the documents, each one a nail in the coffin of their deception. The truth was on my side, and there was no denying it. The room fell silent as I spoke, each word laced with the power of everything I had been through. I wasn't just the victim anymore. I was the force they had underestimated. But then came the unexpected, something none of us had seen coming. The opposing lawyer stood up, his hand trembling as he presented a letter. "This letter," he said, "is from Sam's mother. It speaks of her involvement in decisions made within the family, decisions that could change everything." I felt the air leave my lungs. A cold shock ran through me. A letter from my mother? What was this? I froze for a moment, disbelief washing over me. My heart raced as I tried to process the weight of what was happening. I thought I had prepared myself for everything. But this was a secret I hadn't known about. The letter contained accusations, suggesting that my mother had been complicit in the very things I had been fighting against. My family, my mother, had they all been part of the plan to keep me down? The betrayal ran deeper than I could have ever imagined. My chest tightened as the room seemed to close in on me, but I couldn't break. I couldn't let them see my vulnerability. I took a deep breath, closing my eyes for just a moment, steadying myself. I wasn't going to let this destroy me, not now. When I opened my eyes, I saw a photo of my mother on the desk, one I had kept from my childhood. It was old, worn, but it reminded me of the love we shared, even if it had been hidden beneath layers of pain. That love was still there, buried deep beneath everything that had happened. I stood, my voice steady, as I addressed the room. You've tried to break me, manipulate me, and deceive me, but I won't be silenced anymore. I've fought for too long to let this lie stand. The courtroom was still. Every word I spoke, every piece of truth I laid bare, was a weight on their shoulders. I could see their fear. They knew their lies were unraveling. Then, just as I thought I had turned the tide, a family member, someone close to me, accused me of being greedy, of wanting revenge. Greedy? No, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I'm here because I deserve what's mine, and no one will take that from me anymore. The weight of it all hung in the air. The family was relentless, trying to tear me down, trying to discredit every word I said. They were pulling every trick they had left, trying to manipulate the narrative and paint me as the villain. But I wasn't backing down. I had come too far. The judge's gavel came down. Silence. The room seemed to hold its breath as the final decision approached. I stood there, my heart pounding, knowing that this was the moment of truth. I had fought for everything, my dignity, my future. The truth had been laid bare. But what would the judge decide? Would the lies be exposed for good? Would I finally have what I deserved? I sat in the quiet of my room, my mind racing, but for the first time in a long while, my heart felt a little lighter. It had all led to this moment, the final decision. I had come so far, but now the weight of what had to be done pressed down on me like never before. The tension was palpable. Every breath I took a reminder that today I would either free myself or remain shackled to the past. The family conflict had reached its peak, and I was standing at the edge of a precipice, knowing that the choice I made would determine everything. Could I let go of the bitterness, the hurt, and the rage that had fueled me for so long? Was it even possible to forgive them for everything they had done? My fingers drummed on the desk as I stared at the papers in front of me, evidence of the battle I'd waged, evidence that would either destroy them or set me free. The phone rang, breaking my train of thought. It was the lawyer. I picked up, holding my breath. Sam, there's something else. Something from the past. A final piece of evidence that could change everything. I listened as he explained, my chest tightening with every word. A final secret, buried so deep, and for a moment, I wondered if it was the key to finishing this once and for all. It could give me everything I needed to make them pay for everything they had put me through. But as I sat there, my heart heavy with the weight of it all, I realized I had come too far to let my fight be defined by vengeance. I closed my eyes, thinking of my mother's words. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting, Sam. It means freeing yourself from the chains that bind you. I put the phone down, taking a deep breath. No more. I was done. The fight had taken so much from me already, but the anger, the need for revenge, it wasn't worth it. I had to choose peace. I'd let go. But even as I made that choice, I knew that there would be consequences I hadn't fully considered. The past had a way of following you, even when you thought you had moved on. I gathered myself for one final confrontation. This was the moment when everything would either crumble or come together. It wasn't just about the estate anymore. It was about facing the people who had once been my family, looking them in the eyes and telling them the truth of what they had done to me and to themselves. I walked into that room like I had never walked into one before. No fear, no hesitation, just the hard resolve to stand for myself. But as I began to speak, something shifted. One of my own, someone I had trusted, threw me off balance. My cousin, his voice sharp, tried to smear my name, claiming that I was out for money and revenge. He spun a web of lies in front of everyone. The old anger flared inside me, but I didn't let it show. Instead, I gathered myself, standing firm. What I want isn't money, it's justice. And the truth. You can try to twist it, but I've got the proof. I've been watching, and now it's time for you to face what you've done. I watched them squirm as I laid out the truth. The lies they told, the schemes they crafted, they were all coming undone in that room, and I wasn't going to let them get away with it any longer. They had underestimated me, thinking they could push me around. But as the room fell into silence, my lawyer handed me a letter, and the floor beneath me seemed to shift again. This, he said, could change everything. The letter was from my mother, signed by her, a hidden piece of the puzzle I hadn't expected. It was a bombshell, an admission of complicity in their schemes, one that would crush me if I let it. My hands trembled as I read it, the words cutting deep. How could she have been part of this? I took a breath, trying to keep myself steady. The truth I had fought for. Now, it felt like it might tear me apart. I didn't know how to reconcile the woman I thought I knew with the one revealed in that letter. And I felt exposed, vulnerable, and for a moment, everything I had worked for threatened to collapse. But then, I reminded myself, this wasn't about them anymore. It was about me. I folded the letter, carefully placing it on the table. I won't use this, I said, my voice calm. Some truths are too heavy to bear, and maybe this is one of them. But it doesn't change what you've done, and it doesn't change who I am now. The room was quiet as I made my final plea. I've carried this burden for too long. I'm letting it go. But not for you. For me. If you want to change, if you want a chance to rebuild, then start with honesty. Start with the truth. After the confrontation, I walked away from the room, the weight of my decisions sinking in. I had let go of my anger, my need for revenge, but the emotions that came with that were still raw. Letting go wasn't easy. It never is. Just as I started to question myself, the doorbell rang. I opened it to find a close family member standing on my doorstep, their eyes filled with uncertainty. They had come asking for help, for something personal. Despite everything, they reached out. I stood there, caught in a moment of uncertainty. Could I really help them after everything? Should I? But in that moment, I realized that healing, true healing, wasn't a solitary journey. Sometimes it's about extending a hand, even when you've been hurt. I agreed to help, but I set my boundaries. I knew where I stood now, and I wasn't going to let anyone push me back into old patterns. As the conversation ended, I went back to my room, reflecting on how far I had come. The scars of the past would always be with me, but they no longer defined me. I had found peace in the present, and I was ready to move forward. A few days later, I received a phone call with an offer, a job opportunity, one that seemed like the beginning of something new. The prospect of it overwhelmed me. Was I ready to move on, to truly start fresh? But I knew that the only way forward was to take the leap, to trust myself. I accepted the offer, standing tall, no longer weighed down by the past. The future was mine, and I was ready to face it head-on. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control. As I walked away from everything that had held me back, my family, my past, I didn't feel anger or resentment. There was a quiet sense of closure, and maybe even a glimmer of hope that one day things could be better. But I knew that the most important thing was that I had found my own peace, and that was enough.